right, you guys, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. And this is where real stories meet a real transformation. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga. And if you've maybe ever felt unheard or overlooked or maybe burnt out, or just disconnected from the people and some moments that you actually love, I guarantee you today's episode is going to hit a little bit differently. And if you found yourself wanting to maybe increase the volume on this particular episode as well, hey, you're going to love what we're about to talk about. As you understand, this is the number one place where people discover the real stories, the real methods, and breakthroughs that are actually helping everyday humans claim their lives, health, relationships, and purpose. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do with today's information. So make sure you're subscribed to the Online Prosperity Show so that you do not miss out on any of these particular episodes. Now, today we're going to be diving into something that a lot of people don't realize is silently changing either their marriages, their confidence, their careers, even their mental health, and sometimes their identity. And that thing is hearing. Yes, you heard that right. So before we begin, I just want to make sure that you can actually hear me, because I know today you're going to want to share this episode with somebody who keeps saying, huh? At dinner times or at your next networking event. Now, I can't wait to welcome my incredible guest on the show today. Now, Bindya, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prosper, for having me on your show.
Did you hear all that I said about you and what we're going to talk to people about today?
Absolutely. Loud and clear.
Fantastic. Otherwise, if you had a problem with that, then I wouldn't even know where to start. Now, for those that are watching right now, Bindya Debonn is the director and clinical audiologist at Harken Audiology. And she has obviously, from what you're going to hear, her story is fascinating because she just didn't start a business. She actually rebuilt herself and in the process took others along. She's migrated countries, worked outside her industry for years. She went on and requalified, battled uncertainty, and even took a break that accidentally became an identity crisis and somehow turned that into purpose for herself. So this is not a movie plot of sorts. This is where you will actually see maybe yourself, or actually hear things that you never thought were possible and how others are creating a life for themselves. Now, Bindya, I could go on and talk about things I'm not even qualified to talk about. Take us back, to that time in Melbourne in 2021. You'd probably just arrived. You were already an audiologist from overseas, but suddenly you arrive here and you have to actually restart, your identity from scratch. What did that season feel like for you?
Yeah, so just a correction. So I relocated to Melbourne in 2011, end of 2011. Yeah, and with work permits and permanent residency and things like that, all set to sort of start a new life here in Australia. And like with all medical or allied health professionals, what happens is you have to go through a registration process to be able to practice clinically in the area of your expertise. And so that's what my first goal was initially, to sort of get on with the exams that was presenting at the time. But I have to also add that I actually came in with an accepted research proposal to pursue a doctorate degree at the La Trobe University back then to do a research program in voice. So all accepted and ready to start the program, but that would mean a 4-year full-time enrollment into the doctorate program, or you're looking at 8 years part-time. So as a brand new migrant, you are looking at the economics of things. You're looking at, the priority then becomes to find a job and then to be able to settle down, maybe on a home, in due course, and then take life forward from there. So it was a very hard decision. I was pretty studious during my undergrad and post graduation back in India, and I loved what I did. So wanted to pursue the doctorate degree, but in saying that, there was this other life priority to settle down and obviously have to be able to work and make a living. So I had to forego the acceptance for the doctorate degree and say, okay, all right, what I'm going to do is start writing my exams to be able to practice as a clinical audiologist. But I knew the exams were back in the day was just, I believe, twice a year. So you've got lots of gaps in between where you can just be studying for those exams and not doing anything in the meantime. So I was like, again, priority, settling in, having an income come in. So I started applying for jobs. I've sent through hundreds of applications. It didn't bother me what sort of job that I would get into, anywhere that I can use my skills, not just clinical skills. You've got administrative skills. You can talk on the phone. You've got your language right. So there's so many areas you can actually be of use. So, and that's one amazing thing about Australia and migrating to Australia. You can be head bent or hold on to that fact that, oh, this is what I studied, this is the only thing that I'm going to get into, or explore other avenues where you've got so many skills that you can provide to in whatever aspect of role that you're looking for. So got through, didn't I don't think I got through it. Got a few calls for interviews, didn't go through. And then through a reference from church at the time, I managed to get into case management school for one of the workers' compensation agents, got accepted, and then went through the school program for, I believe it is a certificate 3 in case management. And then, and then became a case manager for working for workers' compensation, completely different to what I've been, went through training for. So that was a big journey in itself. So, but while working, I was also trying to clear the registration exams in the hope of being able to practice clinically. So, but life takes on, and I continued in that sector for about 7 years. Worked in the workers' compensation industry with different agents, eventually ended up managing hearing loss claims because of my background in clinical audiology. And but deep down, yes, the income's coming in. By then you've owned a home, you've settled in, everything's working fine. But then deep down there's that restlessness. You're like, don't think I'm doing what I'm called to do. There's some sort of a deep-seated, I wouldn't call it an inadequacy, but there's that drive that's not met for some reason. And within the workers' compensation industry, with any insurance companies, there are a lot of red tapes. So, and so what happens is, even when the person's on the other end who's meant to receive, let's say, or get their claim accepted or approved, you're going ahead and rejecting because of all the red tape that's in place. And so you find yourself rejecting a lot more than approving and accepting things. So, which would be of use to the person opposite. But so all that, I think, drove me to a place of still not satisfied with what I'm doing. And then what happened was in 2018, there was a point where I wasn't clearing the registration exams as well. So that took a toll on me. And I was like, oh my God, has the industry moved on? Like, what, in the sense, not the clinical basics of things, but, you're trained to answer questions and trained in a certain way abroad or overseas or in India. And I began to think the training, while the basics are the same, while audiology as a profession largely remains the same, what's the priority given here? And that's what, when I did a few attempts and I wasn't getting across, I was like, wait a minute, I'm at this position where I'm almost 7, 8 years off the industry. I need to be able to know how is it done differently here. And so the decision to retrain myself was then taken at that point. And I remember thinking, there are two universities in Melbourne that offer the master's clinical program, and one is the La Trobe and the Melbourne University. And I was like, okay, if this is while I still had the job and I was doing pretty well. So if this is the direction that I'm meant to take, I said I had a prayer and I said, God, I'm just going to apply to one university. If it's meant to be, that's what it's meant to take. I don't want to be knocking on pillars and posts and applying all over the place and see where I get through. I want to do it at the best. So Melbourne University is ranked #1 within Australia for the Masters in Clinical Audiology program. And I believe it's the 30th ranking across the globe as well for that course. So I was like, if I'm going to retrain myself, I'm going to get it done at the best of places. And that's where, so I said, I'm going to apply to Melbourne University, and with, I provided my history, my background in the diverse areas that I've been able to apply that audiology information, even if it was with workers' compensation. And so I got through. And I remember the dean at the time when I got in, the rejection rate for the applications were in its early 80s, in the sense about, I think, 84% of the applications that were put forth for Masters in Clinical Audiology were going to were rejected. And so the dean said at the orientation, he's like, if you're here, either you're super brilliant or you're super lucky. So there I was. And I think by far one of the best places to study and to acquire knowledge, and the wealth of information and experience you can draw out of. And in my batch, I was the oldest. Everybody else was at least 10 to 12 years younger to me. And so that was a big shift. And so here I was walking in, and we have group assignments. It is amazing. And, when the younger people are so concerned about getting that 1 mark right, and not getting it 100% right. You go and you walk in with your wisdom and say, okay, it's not about the mark, it's about what you can get out of this, and apply that appropriately, and being able to provide that wisdom among those groups. And I still have strong connections and bonds with a lot of my friends who have connected at that point from Melbourne University. So I graduated in 2019, completely understanding why I wouldn't have cleared up any of those exams, because the priority for patient care is so much very different when it comes to the Australian environment as compared to the Indian background. So, so it made so much more sense to me. It felt good to reconnect and to, sort of, how do I say, relearn and relearn things differently from in that perspective. So graduated 2019, and or in 2019, I had the most amazing experience of being part of a team, a non-for-profit organization called EASING, that does hearing outreach programs in a lot of countries, and like Cambodia and Fiji and Malawi. And from university, myself and two other classmates of mine, and two university lecturers, professors, and we all got to go and spend 2 weeks in Malawi. One of the most, I think, life-changing experiences, I would say, for me, by far. It's just that simple act of, we collectively saw close to, I would say, close to 100 people a day in those outreach programs. And, the moment you fit them with, we carried a lot of refurbished hearing aids from here to be able to fit on the spot for a lot of the people that we're seeing, do ear canal management, so clear out wax, clogged up waxes, ear canals, and the simple smile, just from the act of getting wax out, and the fact that they can hear again, and the look on their faces, oh my God, just takes you home. It's like it doesn't, we underestimate, I think, the quality of our hearing. When you can hear the birds again, you can hear the rustle of the leaves, the wind blowing, those little, the music, like how it needs to be heard. We take those things so much for granted that we come across somebody who can't appreciate those things because of deficits involved, and we're able to provide a solution. And they sit there either teary-eyed or laughing hysterically because they can hear the world again, or a beautiful smile that takes you home. So it's one of those things, and really, I think, reaffirmed why I wanted to do what I want, that drive within me to do what I want to do. And so, yeah, and I think, and I don't think I don't know if I would have gotten that opportunity if I wasn't with Melbourne Uni. So there you are. So graduated 2019 and then got into internship and worked with an independent hearing care clinic for about 4 to 5 years, which is, how to say, was far away from where I lived, so more close to about an hour. Yeah, so used to drive in to and fro work more than an hour, but by end of 2024 began to have some health issues, did my back in a few times with all the driving, and we were at that point, we were battling other personal sort of health related issues as well. And so the best appropriate decision at the time was to take time off. And I remember my husband said, just take a break, take 6 months off, just relax. Take time off. And yeah, so December 2024, I quit work and I was like, yep, that's it. It's all fine and dandy. I'm going to find work close to home after 6 months. About 2 weeks in, it began to do my head in. Like, I've never not worked. I've always had a project, whether it was working, doing claims management or whatever it was, or studying, or there was something that I was always doing. So 2 weeks in, it did my head in. It was like so many questions. Where to now? If I take a 6 month break, am I again going to miss out on where the industry is and what the latest advancements are? Am I going to forget things? It begins to work on your mind. So am I going to lose those connections within the industry that I have? And then what if I don't get a job? And so those sort of things really began to play on my mind. I was like, and then started looking for work. The only options, work close to home. The only options that opened up or the openings up were only in retail spaces for audiology. And that was definitely not a place where I wanted to practice clinically. So, and it was that time when my cousin from New South Wales was visiting us for Christmas. So he runs a very successful NDIS program and in New South Wales. And he's looking, I was like, what is wrong with you? He almost looked at me. It's like, I don't understand. Why are you why can't you just start your own clinic?
Wow.
What? Mind you, there were people who would offhandedly comment, and over the years, it's like, Bindya, why didn't you start your own clinic? I was like, that's not something you just wish for and it just happens. There's
Mm.
finances involved. You should know what to do to set up a clinic. I know clinical audiology. I know how to practice it, but not everything that goes behind it. And so he comes and he's like, no, 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 what are you doing? He's like, there's so much about it. And it's like, I really brushed him off. I brushed him and was like, yeah, it's easy for you to say. It's like there's so many things involved in it. And I literally brushed him. I was like, no, no, Bindya, I want you to seriously consider this. And so he goes off, and I was having my quiet time, and I was like thinking, oh God, is this you? I don't want to be jumping into something. I had to have a clear direction. And I started I was just playing around with names. I was like thinking, if I had to put up a clinic, what would I name it? And so, you know how on Instagram you have all these catchy names that are very unique. And so it's like, oh, that, and I made a list and I was like, I would sleep on it, wake up the next day. And I was like, nah, 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 it doesn't work with me. And I remember attending church, and I think it was after the Christmas service or before, I can't remember quite well. I'm attending service, and the worship leader, after leading worship, says, hark means to listen. So
Mm.
it's from that space, hark, the herald, the angels sing, it's from the carol. But for me, it was hark means to listen. And I took that, and I remember looking at my hubby and I said, that's it. No more searching for names. I've got my name. And I went back to, and it's like, that makes so much sense because at Harken Audiology, you would be heard. So it's me sitting across them and listening and spending the time to actually listen. What's the issue? Not just quickly do big for the sake of doing it, but I'm here across them to listen, to help you listen. It's not just about not just about hearing, but being able to process what you're hearing and taking it further. And so that's where Harken Audiology then gets its name. I've had a lot of people come and say, what does Harken mean? And that's a conversation starter altogether. And it's like, oh, is that an English word? I said, very much, very much an English word. So yeah, and that's where Harken Audiology, and then it was, oh my goodness, 6 months from the end of 2024, brainstorming, researching, reaching out to people, making new connections, literally taking the jump off a cliff. Ask me. And, at uni, they don't teach you how to start up your own practice. Nobody teaches you those things. It's you, but I have to say, 1.5 years since that timeline, the amount of wealth of information that I've learned, I don't think you would, on the job, like doing things, researching and reaching out and networking, and it's phenomenal. And yeah, there's no turning back.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. And just following your journey, I mean, your life story just has so much to unpack from it. But what I really liked was, what you said towards the end, how your networking is now putting you in places. And look at you now on the Online Prosperity Show. This is all through the networking you've been doing. So, kudos to you for all of that. Now, let's just take you back a little bit. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
when you came to Australia, you had already qualified, you're already, a practicing sort of audiologist, so to speak. Was that always the dream as a kid, or because I don't know if I've mentioned to you, I've got two girls, and one of them came to me last Halloween, and she was dressed as the witch. And she said, "This is what I want to be when I grow up." And I just don't think it's a good career choice. So, what, what was the wish when you were growing up then?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I had a lot of wishes as a girl. Oh, it was a teacher once, and then a psychologist once, and then all over the place. But I think growing up in an Indian family back then, you just had two options. You either a doctor or an engineer.
Right.
There's there's no options other than that. So there's a lot of pressure on you to be able to pick either one. So I knew I was not really great at math. So then that drops the option of the engineering out of the way. And then so it's biology and science. Okay, so it's medicine or health sciences or that sort of. So my around a lot of my friends when I was in 11th and the grade 12th started already getting into coaching for entrance exams. Was a huge thing. You have to clear up entrance exams to be able to get into medical school, and through a rank, so that you just have to then pay the fees that that was due either by semester or annual. So I was very adamant that if I was going to get into medical school, it was through an entrance exam. I didn't want my dad to spend a lot of money. or you could just pay the university a huge sum of money to be able to just be granted a seat to and then plus the fees. So I was very hell-bent on that decision that I wanted to go through the entrance program. But I know I was thinking ahead than just the graduate. I was like, what do I want to super specialize in and sort of things like that. And in my 11th grade, I was actually in a waiting room, took my mom to see a dentist. I was waiting out in the ready room, and I see the board called audiologist, and I see a lady come out, and there's a mom sitting next to me, and she's coming out, and she's giving this mom a whole lot of exercises to train at home. And she's a child wearing hearing aids, and she's like, oh, and I could hear the child reciprocate and see the reactions because she's beginning to hear. And I was like, oh my God, that's so fascinating. You're talking about a time when there was no Google. You're not searching for information. It's the time of the encyclopedias, so or whatever was informed to you at career expose in universities, and like not at university, like high school. And so audiology was never in my, I don't know, never mentioned, or like I said, it's either medicine, dentistry, or what do I say? Engineering. Okay, so I was like audiology, and I had some basic understanding. Anything to do with ology at the end was a detailed study, and I was like audio and hearing. Okay, so it could be something that you super specialize after, like I don't know, medicine, and then maybe get into ear, nose, and throat (ENT) and go down that pathway. And I was like, okay, that's it. That's what I want to be. So focus on getting into a medical degree. That was my first experience with audiology. And so I spent a lot, finished 12th grade and did a lot of coaching to get into entrance exams. I'm not joking, Prosper. I went to across almost like different states across India, and wrote 7 different kinds of entrance exams. This is huge back in the day. It's exhausting. It's so much of competition, so much of, and then the waiting game. Yes, you write it. My intention was, come on, you're writing 7 entrance exams. You have to get in. You're most likely to get into some place, and the waiting game gets over. The results come in, and I was shocked to know that any for medical. I got in for things like dentistry, Ayurveda, and other sort of sub series. And I was like, no, 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 no. I have to get into medicine. This is what I want to do. And dentistry was the next. But my dad was like, why don't you just take it? It's my parents were like, it's okay. You can go for this. I said, no, no, no. I want to get into medicine. And so my dad said, okay, let's do another gap year where you're focusing only on your entrance coaching and then give it a try again. But my mom at the time, she was not very happy with taking that 12-month gap, because you're a girl, you need to you have the clock ticking for everything else that follows in life. So, and my dad then was like, okay, let's pay a donation and get you into medical school. And he's paid this lump sum donation, and for some reason it didn't sit right with me. I think it was like, no, I don't want to be paid to get in. I want to get in through merit. I think for some reason, that was the headspace I was in. So the whole ethos then was, okay, try again, do again. We were on our return back journey in the train, and my mom comes across a newspaper with an ad saying, okay, courses for speech, language, and hearing. Okay, that's what it's called, a bachelor's degree. And we're trying in one after the other entrance exam. The results came. Prosper, I'm not joking. They were like this 3 days that I didn't switch on the lights at home. I was going under depression. My friends, my classmates were getting into elite universities. They were all being picked, and they had their direction and life set. And here I was in limbo land, not knowing what to do, really at a crossroad. Like, even if I had to go and just enroll myself into Bachelor's of Science, all the universities applications had closed by then because I was sitting in waiting for my entrance results exams. And so my mom had this paper cutting, and we were sitting together as a family. We looked at that paper. It's like, okay, worst case scenario, nobody has heard about this course. Okay. So they're not going to sit and comment on, oh, why this and why that. Because being in an Indian family, you have a lot, you are at the mercy of a lot of opinions and advices. Okay. So, because if you're doing something that nobody knows about or nobody's heard about, then you can clearly excel. That was my other headspace. So, and I was like, okay, don't know what it is, but there's this ad, and we spent time together, and I took that decision. Okay, let's go down this path. At least I'm spending, if I spend 12 months in and I don't like it, I'm going back to that path of doing my entrance exams again. I got into that university for my bachelor's in speech, language, and hearing. It was back in the day, it was Bachelor's of Science in Speech and Hearing. That was the exact name. And 6 months in, I was like, man, this is audiology. This is what I want to do. This makes sense to me. This is we're dealing with children, we're dealing with adults, we're dealing with aged population. I felt myself alive. And I was like, man, nobody has heard about it, so I can excel in this place compared to any of my peers at the time, and that's the journey into audiology for me. Completely stumbled into it, though I knew I wanted to get it, I had no clue. I just knew the name audiology. I had no idea how to get to it, but these things that fall into your place at the right time, at the divine appointed time, which sort of steers you into that direction. And that's the only, and then there was no turning back. I excelled in the university, did really well, presented at conferences, had opportunities to present at an international conference at Denmark, in the US at Philadelphia. I did my master's in audiology, speech, language, and pathology. So back in the day, it was a combined degree. So you specialize not just in audiology, and then you've got speech therapy and pathology included as well. So that's the direction. And then after I taught and I worked in India, and then I worked overseas in the Middle East as well, close to a year, before then relocating and migrating to Australia.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And what serendipity. I mean, that
Yes.
train ride, and then you open a newspaper and it just points you right at the place that you wanted. But I wanted us to really highlight the struggle that you underwent. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned, going through 7 different states and writing all these exams and getting the things that you actually did not want. Obviously, at that particular moment, it looked like it was all rejection, but you were actually just being redirected to the right thing that you absolutely wanted to do. But you then obviously went on, qualified, did that master's, did all the things that you did in all the other countries. And when you came to Australia, it looked like all of that meant nothing. You know what I mean? You had to start from scratch. And you went on to redo that master's again at Melbourne University after already being qualified overseas. But what does that teach you about ego, humility, and reinvention? The fact that you were the oldest in the room, you had all these qualifications, you knew you were on top of your game, but you're learning with kids that are just coming from, dare I say, just high school, and you know what I mean, no, not that much as experienced as you were, but you still had to show up in that particular space. What did that teach you about ego, humility, and the reinvention that needed to happen there?
Yeah, see, if you were to ask me, would I change anything? Absolutely not. Because it took me, so after masters, you're at your high peak, you're like, oh, you're cruising the world, you've got these, you're at the top of the world, and then life hits you. And then you've brought to this place where none of that matters. Nobody cares. Nobody needs to know. Nobody wants to know. And it hits you really hard. And even being accepted for a doctorate program and then deciding and choosing to not go ahead with it because the priority was to work or to get, of course, have an income, and then not being able to clear a few the registration exams. It really, really, I think one of the things that it did is there was a point when I was I really thought, no, maybe this is not what I meant to do. Okay, I'm happy with the glory days. I've got my memories, beautiful. All that's done. Maybe this is it. This is where my life is. And I remember, I'm not joking, Prosper. This again, bringing that part, quoting on the word serendipity. It is. I used to travel by train to work. Work was in the city. I used to come across billboards that would have the sign "Don't give up." Now, this was the year before this was the year that before that I decided to go back and take my master's again. There was no more attempts that I could do with the exam, so I had to come to face the decision where either no more audiology and this is it. And so I would read billboards and I would, don't give up. And then I would I would get off the station, get to the car park, switch on the car, and it would be a podcast that I would be listening to or something. And all of a sudden the speaker would be like, don't give up. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? And then I was like, okay, maybe because my husband, see, if I don't have the support of my husband, there's no way you're going forward. You can't just do this singularly. There's mortgages, there's all that's hanging in the balance when you're thinking of going back to relearn or study again full time. So you're getting off one person's income. So there has to be that level of agreement that happens inside home. And so I was like, I told my husband, I said, see, there's no more attempts. This is it. I don't think calling it a quit. And he's like, he's the one who asked me, why don't you go do your master's again? And so you see the direction being, so don't give up billboards. Then from the speaker that's coming through the podcast in that very evening, and my husband saying, why don't you go back and study again? And I was like, are you serious? Serious. And then I was still not sure, Prosper, if this was what I meant to do, because you're getting off of a good income, to do this. And so, and that's where I had to put like a fleece test to see this is what I'm only going to apply to Melbourne Uni. I could have pretty much maybe gotten both, but I'm like, if I'm meant to go in this direction, this is what I'm going to do. I want to relearn or retrain myself in the best place, and that's the University of Melbourne. If I get through, I know I'm meant to be doing this. If it's not, then it's a sign. That was my fleece test.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I like that because it really showcases that the support was there, and you also listened to whatever the messages that were coming through, and knowing what it is that you wanted got you on the path that you were on. Now, speaking of knowing that which you wanted, I find it very fascinating that you said you didn't want to work in the retail style audiology environments because it actually didn't align with how you believed care should be delivered. Now,
Right.
is that a message to say there's something broken in the hearing industry that maybe some people might not be aware based on what is in the mainstream?
See, I think I don't know if broken is the right word. There's people choose to provide services a whole different way. And I routinely come across people who've had negative experiences elsewhere where they've been looked at as another source to get a sale done, where the main intention is to capitalize on a problem, or let's say a disability or a hearing loss, and rather than actually sitting and working this out with the person and saying, is there solutions about what are the solutions that are there, and give them the right to choose at the end of the day. See, of course, they can back out of things, but they also back out with a negative experience, thinking they're either putting off or delaying taking on the need, the solution or the device that they actually need sooner than later. And so, you don't, and a lot of people come in, even after starting my practice, I've had people come in really, really close because they're worried if I'm going to sell them some. I'm here to sell. And I've shifted that completely. I said, I'm not going to sell you anything that you don't need. I'm here to educate you. I'm here to tell you this is, in response to the struggles that you're facing in a real life scenario, what your options are. And see, what is important for me as a clinician is there has to be a level of readiness that comes from that side. Readiness to go that journey, readiness to take that solution to the next step with me. That is when rehabilitation becomes really complete. So if I could be sitting and saying, oh, hearing aids are the best decision for you, if you don't take it, you're going to, I don't know, decline significantly and use a lot of fear tactics just so that a sale happens. But instead, I can then say, where are you at this journey? You've had hearing loss for a while. How is it affecting you? Is it come to a place where you're now ready to take on? Because it's not like glasses. Having hearing aids, you're relearning and again retraining your brain to hear, not like not extremely pristine like your God-given ears back in the day of your youth, but you're relearning your brain to rewire. And so it's a journey we do together. Okay, so it's not just, okay, this is get on with the most expensive hearing aids on the planet and off you go and figure it out yourself. And that's why a lot of the hearing aids get stored away in drawers, not used, and people giving up, or hearing aids just don't help. And that's not the scenario. That's not the message that I would like people to take away. It's an educational journey. It's where you sit together and see everybody's hearing preference is so different. There's no one size fits all. And that's why being independent is so important to me. I'm not, I don't have pressure from the top to make a sale, if that makes sense. There's no KPI targets that I have to meet, so I can genuinely offer the right advice and solution for the person walking through my doors. And I always say, when you're ready, I'm here to take you on that journey and with varied options. So because I'm not tied up to anybody, I've got the freedom and the liberty and say, be on top with all the tech advancements that's happening and say, oh, okay, that technology with that brand might work with this client or that person who needs the particular issue, and then I have that liberty and that choice to be able to offer that to my clients. And see, it's not always the premium technology. Then you can just go with essential level technology and it'll meet all your needs, and you can be happy and dandy with that. And that's the whole point. We're here to cater to your budget. What's that which you can afford, and then let's work together to maximize that hearing aid for your needs. And that's that point of difference that I'm able to offer as an independent clinician and bring that to the table. And
Absolutely.
so there's lots of places that offer free, and the whole intention with that free is to get you through the door and see if they can sell you something. And if it works for the industry, it works. But it also the problem with that then is you have a lot of dissatisfied people walking around and having the negative notion or, oh, they're just trying to get money out of it. And I've had people walk through that door, sit in front of me, and completely shift that for them and tell them, I'm here when I want you to be ready for this, because it's not like as quick as, taking off your glasses and putting them on. It's a journey you work towards. There's auditory processing, relearning that's involved, and taking you through that. So yeah, that's, if you call me broken, I think any industry can be broken in so many different ways. There's positives, there's positives and negatives. So I guess the audiology industry is just like any industry. People who, I think that's where I would make that statement. And so that was clear from the start for me. That's not how I want to practice my skill.
Absolutely. And thank you for having seen that. And, when you're talking about, people who offer free, yet there's hidden agendas behind, have you ever seen a person with a sign on the road that says free hugs? And then obviously when you reach out to get that free hug, while you're embracing them, they whisper in your ear, that is if you can hear, they whisper in your ear and then they say, it will cost you $50 for me to let go. All right. You would have still gotten the hug for free. They delivered on their promise, but you didn't read the terms and conditions, which is if you want to go about your day, then you got to pay me $50. But the one thing that really stands out about the work that you're doing and what it is that you're doing is, you did mention, there are moments when your patients are actually crying because now they're reconnected with music, their hobbies, and even their marriages again. There are people that are sitting at the corner of the table just going, huh? And they can't hear, and that sort of disconnects them to the fun and everything else that's happening in their world. And you also mentioned that you seem to care less about selling and making sure that, people actually feel heard and educated before they make any of those decisions. So if somebody's watching this right now, they probably themselves obviously had to turn up the volume so they could hear us, or they have a loved one that seemingly has had deteriorating hearing and things of that nature. Where can they go to on the internet to find out a little bit more about how you can, help them or start their journey of education with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So clearly they can get onto our website, which is www.harkenaudiology.com.au. And we've got an online booking process if that's convenient for people to have a go through our website to see what services we offer and book in an appointment, or they can feel free to give me a call and we can have a chat over the phone as well, just to see what that journey might look like. Prosper, just to bring out a point, not everybody who struggles to hear actually does. It's quite, I've come through people struggling with hearing loss in so many ways. It's a very sensitive, majority of the time, Prosper, they just zone out, they switch off. They don't even bother to ask for a repeat. And that's the sad part. And you don't want people to disengage with the things that they love doing or pursuing the hobbies that they would love to do. And we talked about families, the amount of times when parents and spouses or partners or kids have said, go get your hearing checked, dad, or go get something done about your hearing, mom. That's usually the turning point for them to go ahead and do something about it. And a lot of the time they just stop gathering with friends or they stop going out altogether. They begin to isolate and settle into themselves. So yeah, it's a very personal. I have another story where this person was seen by another retail place under the hearing services program, which offers fully subsidized hearing devices for individuals. And majority of their hearing was normal, except at a few frequencies. And the first thing they did is get him to be on hearing aids. And obviously it wasn't working because they weren't listening to the actual need that this person had. Relocated, comes to me, and I was like, hearing aids wouldn't suit you just yet because you've got a bulk of your hearing normal still. So then we're looking at what are the assistive listening devices like Bluetooth connected headphones, which actually cater to the specific hearing loss of the individual. And then, so because his major struggle was just the DB, everything else was fine. And you don't just, so that's the thing, that's the differentiated service that you're able to provide. I'm able to provide the person based on what is the exact problem they're struggling with. And like I said, it's not just one thing that fits everybody. And you might not be a suitable candidate for a hearing aid. Not everybody is suitable. And so those are the tests we go through and say, okay, I know he's got a hearing problem, but is he there yet? Is his hearing loss there yet to meet where a hearing aid is going to give them a suitable outcome. So there's all those differentiators we look into before we make that recommendation and say, what's the best ideal turn to take. And yeah, it's they can have an access to my website, and online bookings available, or leave a message and I'll give them a call and we can have a chat on the phone. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below. Now, from what I'm understanding and from what I'm seeing, you're not just restoring people's hearing here. You're literally giving them back to themselves. I mean, you're restoring their connection back to life, their loved ones, and just them being included in everything that's happening around them. And I think, the work that you're doing actually really does matter. And yeah, I can't wait to see what people are going to do with this information that we've shared with them today. But Bindya, from hearing your journey and your story, you're literally helping others to hear physically, all right? And that's like hearing external using the God-given ears that each and every one of us has. But your journey has required you to literally hear yourself, listen to just you. Is that extra training that needs to happen? Because I've got voices in my head, and half of them, I don't know whether to follow them or not. But you seem to have followed those that serendipitously came to you, and it landed you in the right position.
See, Prosper, I think I'm trying to see what's the best way to answer this. See, in a world where constantly flooded with information, scrolling, it takes up so much of our time. We forget to realize that us as individuals, very driven, or it's not driven, I would say, has the capacity to have intuitions, deep-seated intuitions or drives that really, really directs them. Okay, so this is not just because I'm a Christian and, faith is a huge, big part of my journey. But even if you're not a Christian, even if you didn't believe in a God, every person is innately created with a deep-seated place called intuition, and one of the practices that I daily do is, spend some quality time alone in the silence, just meditating. And there are scriptures that I meditate on. And what I do is then, what then gives me a lot of clarity of thought, a lot of clarity of action. It calms my highly stimulated brain. You want that place of calm and composure, and then to be able to critically evaluate for yourself. See, we're not going to always take the right steps. You're going to, unless you take those steps, you're not going to find out. Failure is necessary to learn. I don't look at things as failure. You look at taking steps, and if it hasn't worked, then you're learning something out of it. And then you're redirecting yourself. You are perfecting yourself in the next direction, on the next step that you're taking. But it is so, so important, I think, to have that place of silence and to meditate and to have that where you are quietening, because this overstimulation confuses people in taking that direction. And I think, we're all created for purpose. Whether you know it or you don't know it, we're all created for a unique destiny, for a unique purpose. And I think fulfillment comes when you step out in that direction. And the thing is, Prosper, what you offer, I cannot offer. What I offer, you cannot offer. And that's how beautiful the world is. Imagine if everybody did the same thing, we wouldn't be heading in any direction. And and that's why we are created, to have that purpose. And so it's so important to find that, and to find that meaning, and find that purpose, and get to be driven by that, to take those right steps. And I would encourage anybody seeking and trying to understand, there is a God who has a purpose. There is a reason why you're here. You're born for such a time as this. No matter how challenging the environment looks, how challenging the times look, the economics of the things in the world, the direction is the world is going, but you're born for such a time as this, which means there is no one in history, and there is no one in history yet to come who will be able to do the things that you have been born to do. And to find that out, it is, to going to hearing that voice, that deep-seated voice, that direction, that source of direction that tells you, the one of the Bible verses that I cling on to, the steps of a righteous man are ordered by the Lord. And and the other verse that I rely on is, acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will make your path straight. I know I'm talking to an audience who might not be Christian, and that's fine too. So, whoever's listening to me, this you're meant to be here at such a time as this. Your role to your immediate sphere of influence is so unique. Nobody can do the things that you do for your friends, your mates, your family, your colleagues, to the community. And I think there's lots in store for you to explore, to figure out, to learn on the go. Yeah. And
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that, conclusive take right there, because so many people, like you say, we're just wandering around and not stopping to actually listen to that voice, that still inner voice that then becomes the intuition that you're talking about. And now, Bindya, you've already taken us into your world now. We now know everything that has happened, the reinvention, the sitting back and retraining yourself and everything else. But what's next? What are you working on that we should now be excited about, now that we're cheering you on, and can't wait to see what you're working on?
It's just last week we've been 12 months into opening of Harken Audiology.
Congratulations.
Yes, and I think more getting the word out is priority for this year, just to know that point of difference. And I also see pediatric patients as well. So anybody from, well, my youngest is 9 months, and the oldest that I have in my books is 94. So
Wow.
anybody in between. And so the auditory processing is another space that I'm actually actively working on. Auditory processing is what the brain does with what you hear. Okay, so you know how if a few seconds of silence, what are you hearing around you?
Or
Prosper.
there's voices in my head that if I just, I might just,
No, forget the voices in your head, but around you in the room.
oh, usually there's silence. There's just electromagnetic
Silence.
silence that just,
The electromagnetic from the equipment that you're using,
yeah.
yeah, good. But why doesn't that take your attention? Are you hyper focused on it? Do you hear it when we are having this conversation? You
No,
don't.
yes, yes, yes. Okay, right.
You're hearing it only because you've chosen to take that moment of silence and tune in to
Mm.
that sound. Okay, so this is just one of the skills that auditory processing helps. So it's being able to push what's not required in your surrounding to your background, and
Mm.
getting your brain and your ears to hone in on what's necessary.
Is
A
that
lot
the
of
same as the reticular activated system with the eyesight, where if I buy a red car, all I start seeing is a red car, and if you've got a baby in the auditory side of things, you can literally, amongst people shouting and singing, you can hear a baby cry through that noise because you're specifically working towards hearing that.
That's right, because the mum is constantly aware of that particular baby. Okay,
Right.
so it's very similar. So even with eyesight, you can have the foreground and the background vision. So if you're focusing on, you can push that to your background. But the same thing happens with your auditory system as well. So you could be going out on a walk, listening. You're listening to a podcast at a very minimal volume, and then you can't obviously hear the train. Sorry, so because you're tuning into what you're listening, you don't necessarily listen to the car that's whooshed past, the screeching cockatoo above you, the rustling noise of the wind. That all goes to the background, but you are aware of those sounds, and your brain knows, oh, I don't need to pay attention to that, and push it to the background. Now, we're seeing increasing challenges where kids face that difficulty in classroom environments. So where they're able to they get very distracted because of all the noise, since they cannot focus on what the teacher is doing. So that's another space, very unique space that I work on, is the auditory processing assessments. There are therapy involved. There are again devices that can be helped in those particularly challenging listening environments where the person gets that additional help of sort of hushing out or zoning out of the background noise and tuning into what the speaker is trying to say. So that's another space, and that can be a deficit where people can, even with normal hearing, you don't need to have a hearing loss for this. It's just a place where the brain's wired differently, that they cannot separate that.
Absolutely. And I think you'll be helping a lot of people, because with what is happening these days, so many kids are being distracted in class and then they're being left out and left behind. And there I was thinking, the situation that my little girl has, which is basically selective hearing. She only hears words like candy, chocolate, and things of that nature. So maybe you could work with her and we can figure that part out, right?
Yeah,
No.
oh, the amount of times when I have parents, oh, I think she's selectively listening. Check
Yeah.
it out. Just check it out. The benefit
Yeah,
of that.
she doesn't hear the words broccoli or,
Yeah.
flour. It's just that she absolutely loves. But Bindya, I can't thank you enough for the time that you spent on the call with me today. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value for those that really need your services. And I want to make sure that everybody jumps onto the links below so that they can actually just start, learning from you. So thank you so much for having listened to that still small voice that has led you to doing what you're doing
Absolutely.
today. And congratulations on the past 12 months that have now set, the stage for what Harken Audiology will become. So I can't wait to see what's next from here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prosper, for giving me this opportunity and actually listening, hearkening to my story.
Absolutely. Now, what an incredible conversation. I mean, today wasn't just about hearing for those that are watching right now, it was about connection, identity, relationships, purpose, and just learning that, sometimes the thing we lose slowly is the thing that we actually took for granted the most. And like what Bindya was saying, so many people you don't necessarily see, and it's not visible that they can't hear. It just is in the way that they start reacting and operating. So thank you so much for sharing this journey and this wisdom with us today with heart, and also just bringing awareness to what so many people actually do take for granted. And if you're watching this right now, and if this episode made you think maybe of somebody in your life that just keeps withdrawing from conversations and maybe turning the TV louder or just slowly disconnecting from the world around them, please share this episode with them. And if they're actually in Melbourne, I would actually suggest that they get in touch with Bindya so they can connect with the world around them through the work that she's doing at Harken Audiology there. Until next time, obviously, this has been the Online Prosperity Show, where we definitely explore stories, ideas, and breakthroughs that are helping people create a happier, healthier, and more meaningful existence. I can't wait to see what you'll do with this information. Bye for now.